You're live. The internet can totally see you now. To stop, use your encoder. Happy Friday. Friday night. It's currently Friday night here in New York City. Past midnight. Welcome to Domain Expert. I'm your host, Harry Moreno. We are going to, in this video, cover more development on this app I'm calling Lit. I'm going to switch up the format a little bit. I've learned some things since the last video. This will be video number 2 that's published. And I feel like the last video probably spent too much time on an uninteresting problem, which was my laptop was slow due to Spotlight deciding now was a good time, then was a good time to start re-indexing my hard drive. This time around, we hopefully won't run into any sort of slowness like that. This time around, I'm going to probably do more JavaScript and Python development on the actual application. I'm going to try to stick to that and try not to get bogged down in too much, either technical issues, or the other thing that took a long time and wasn't too interesting was configuring Doku. Since the last time we spoke, since the last time I live streamed Doku, I was able to sort of deploy the application to the staging environment, and that's working. So I can probably show some of that, how that works. For those that have some experience with programming and software development, the Heroku is a very popular solution, and Doku is sort of like a free sort of roll your own solution. So I already got the staging environment going for that. So I think rough outline for what I'm going to work on for this hour till 1:46 a.m. is to basically, so I already set up production Doku, or rather staging Doku, and the last thing I worked on was trying to set up the production environment for Doku. Not going to work on that because I'm afraid that might be not too interesting. So that maybe I'll do a video on Doku, just Doku, later on. If people are interested, just leave a comment. That would really motivate me to do that. Instead, I'm probably going to pick this one, which is going to be like more programming heavy. And yeah, let's go with that. This is for those who don't know, this is a Kanban board. When you write software, this is a very popular way to track your work. This is, I think, Trello. So Trello is a company. I think they got purchased by Bitbucket. Not sure if that's true, but they have very, very tight integration. This is basically Trello inside of Bitbucket. I prefer using Bitbucket myself. Well, previously I preferred it because it's free. They give you free GitHub repos, or rather free Git repos. For GitHub, if you wanted a private, GitHub also gives you free Git repos, but they don't give you the private Git repos for free. Bitbucket does. Bitbucket, if the $5 a month for GitHub Pro is too much for you or prohibitive, you can certainly start with Bitbucket and still have your private projects. It's just a different UI, obviously, and that's it. I think most people that are very serious about this do prefer GitHub. I personally have, since I started on, I had my private projects on Bitbucket, and I started there for a long time. At some point, though, I sort of promoted myself to GitHub Pro, and I really like it there too. But this project I started on Bitbucket, so this is where we're at right now. Let's get into it. So I'm probably going to spin up. It's a React Native application with Django backend. So, and I am going to develop it in a sort of full stack manner. So that's build a UI for it if there's a UI component, build the API for it if there's an API component. I have two repos. I have a front end one and a back end one. Let's see. There's also the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in here. Let's see. That's the streaming software. This is the software. Our software. Well, let's read the ticket. The ticket says, user can sign up for service after Facebook login. Now, I know this is probably odd, but I don't want to go too deeply into what the application is. I want that to sort of manifest and become obvious. The point of the video is sort of to just show code. You can sort of piece together and imagine where I'm going with it. So, user can sign up for service after Facebook login. So the user should be able to log in with Facebook, and we should sign the user up for the service after they log in with Facebook. And so far, the API returns 404 if profile by Facebook user ID not found. Yes, so that is the front end. So roughly, I'm also sort of piecing this out as I go on the fly. It's the first time I've ever built an application using Facebook login, so the data model for that was pretty interesting. I had a question. I opened up a question on Stack Overflow a while back where I asked, how would one basically build the data model for an application where you can sign in with Facebook and basically, like, so Facebook is not your project. Facebook is a service that is not your service. So it's not clear whether or not it's a good idea to, how it's an open question as to how to model Facebook access tokens and user accounts. And so I asked this question. I'm building an app, and it didn't seem to be appropriate for Stack Overflow, but I think it's not that bad. I've seen some really bad questions. I think this is not completely out of line here, but anyway. I'm building an app that allows users to sign up with Facebook login. Facebook login gives us an expiring access token. So far, I've thought through having the phone app collect the Facebook access token itself, and it should post it to the API. The API can search to see if it's seen this token before, and if it hasn't, the API should generate a new user account. However, the Facebook docs mention that this token expires. If a user's token expires and they provide a new token to my API, the API will generate a new account for the existing user. How should I solve this? So that's me naively thinking, if I depend on this token this API access token that Facebook issues, if I naively depend on it, and generate an account based off that, that doesn't make sense because that token expires. So, and you get reissued another one after some time. So that's the wrong way to do it. CJayos helpfully responded and said, use the access token to access another part of the Graph API, the Facebook Graph API. Access the profile, and Facebook has modeled their data model, and they have sort of a canonical Facebook profile ID that um, is tracked by them. Um, if for more context, if you all know that Facebook purchased WhatsApp, they famously and notoriously um, told Congress and um, the antitrust agencies of the government that no, we intend to purchase WhatsApp, but really it's very technically difficult to link WhatsApp accounts to Facebook accounts. The data models are completely different, and that's what they testified with, and that's was one of the reasons that the government sort of allowed Facebook to purchase WhatsApp. They sort of said, okay, this is not that they're probably not going to link them. Lo and behold, they were able to figure it out, and now sort of they can sort of link your WhatsApp account to your Facebook account, and probably similarly, they probably have they may have an ID for several things. You know, they own Instagram and stuff like that. But anyway, that's just a random piece of information. So you can use so going back to the answer, you can use the expiration token to um, to get the canonical user ID. This is like the profile user ID, which will give you the user's unique ID for your application. Use that as a primary key. You can try this out with the Graph Explorer tool. I think it's safe to use that. And these are temporary. I think you can just do, this is like, oh, that's my ID. That's my ID. If anyone wants to Facebook me, that's my canonical user ID. This is a temporary token that expires. That expires. And so everyone that has a Facebook account or WhatsApp account has this canonical user ID. So you basically get the temporary expiration key, like through Facebook login. You use that right away to get the canonical user ID, Facebook user ID. In a second sort of request, you get a response like this, and here's some docs. And yeah, I asked some follow-up questions, but that's pretty much the gist of it. So that is some context. Oh, and it seems like so that's how the pass off is going to be for the Facebook user ID. I'm going to want to on this application use that Facebook user ID as a field on my profile entity in my data model. So similarly, I too on this application am going to have and create a canonical user ID. It's going to call it. It's going to be called like a lit user ID for the service. And as a field on that model, I may have the Facebook user ID, but it's not a hard dependency. I may also have other ways for to generate a user on my platform. I may have maybe a phone sign up where you can sign up with your phone, and I wouldn't have the Facebook user ID, but I'd have your phone. And similarly, I would I would still want to have like a lit user ID and track it differently. That's the more robust, real world way to do this. Phone numbers. You can also create accounts maybe using traditional email password flow, and there's also other services. Pretty much any service that provides OAuth. So you could probably have logging with Google, and logging with Google or logging with Instagram or pretty much any of those. You could have it. But the key takeaway is that your service should have its own sort of user ID, canonical user ID, and then it's just business logic from there as to how you actually create users or choose to merge and detect users. If you can sort of detect that the same user tried to log in via Twitter and then weeks later they came back and they tried to log in with Facebook, you might want to add some intelligence there for detecting that, and you have to program all that out, but that's what you would do in a real application. That's how the data modeling is going to work. It looks like the mobile app already returns a 404 if the profile by no, this is our API. The API returns 400 if profile by Facebook user ID not found. So that is describing an endpoint on the API. That calls for an endpoint on our API. That calls for an endpoint on our API. Maybe we should spin up the API. So let's try to run the API. Surprisingly, running the API isn't as straightforward as I'd like because I'm actually in the process of migrating it from. I had it running in Kubernetes and I sort of abandoned that for Docker, and so running it locally is a bit in flux. Wonder if I have some commands in here that can run it locally. Well, let's try this. Maybe I'm gonna run it locally, and I want to. The database is Postgres, and in local development, I do run Postgres. I prefer to run Postgres because it it it's gonna be the main database anyway. So, and I'm comfortable administrating Postgres locally. So it also mimics the staging and production environments more closely, and so I prefer that. So let's see if I can run it locally, and it looks like Postgres is running locally. Um, Delete it. PSQL database. What did I call it? Dash. Here's a sanity check. Might have that. That's 10. Just another database that I know is in there. So I mean, at least I know that Postgres is running. So I don't have to find. I forgot what I called the lit projects database, but presumably it's in there, and Postgres is running. So maybe. Okay, so the other thing is I use pip-env in this project, so we're gonna activate this. Under the hood, so pip-env is a collection of projects. It's a wraparound virtual environment. So I just activated the Python virtual environment, and I should be able to do Python manage.py run server. I have unapplied migrations. Your project may not work properly until you apply the migrations for your admin. Run Python manage.py migrate to apply them. So let's apply migrations. I don't know if I need to apply migrations inside of pip-env. We'll find out. Looks like you might. Okay, that worked. I had some other migration, log entry, add action flag choices. I don't remember doing that, but so the API should be running locally. 8,000. Okay, so we got the API. If you haven't noticed, I'm sort of relying on Safari. If this was a front-end heavy project, I'd probably switch over. I might still switch over later into Chrome because they have more familiar and more popular dev tools. But for now, I'm just relying on Safari for personal reasons. I don't like some of the political things that Google and Chrome are doing. So until I absolutely have to use Chrome, I'm going to just use Safari. And I just get you get used to, you get familiar with a different API, or rather a different user interface. Let's see. So that's Safari, and so we got the API running locally, and I have two repos. I have two repos and two Git repositories. Two Git repositories, two Bitbucket. One for the front end, one for the mobile app, and one for the API. I think it's this one. So I have some changes in here. So this is JavaScript. Let me just quickly catch up on what the heck was I writing last time. I was using Reactive Tron. Reactive Tron. Just go over it. I think even if you know React and JavaScript and Python, you might not be aware of Reactive Tron. Reactive Tron is a desktop app for inspecting your React.js and React Native projects. Basically, so React Native, it's a little bit difficult to debug certain things, and some of those things, like API interactions, I found that they are easier to debug with this thing. So basically, I added Reactive Tron. I'm pretty much adding Reactive Tron to almost every page, every file in this project on the front end side, because I do rely on it for the API requests. And so I added some secrets, and I'm pulling those. I was setting the Facebook graph endpoint. I think these differences are that first check mark on the ticket where I am saying that the mobile app is 404ing if the no that was an API thing. I should probably find that. This is not doing that. This is maybe it's doing the other checkmark. Don't show dashboard if phone doesn't have off token. No, this is I added a function called fetch Facebook user ID. Takes the Facebook access token, queries Facebook, and returns the user's Facebook user ID. Fetch Facebook user ID, takes the Facebook access token, queries Facebook. So this is taking that first access token that expires quickly. It queries Facebook and returns the user's Facebook user ID, which is the process I was describing in the beginning. That when you log in with Facebook, the Facebook returns an access token that doesn't have the canonical sort of Facebook user ID that they have. You have to use that first access token to issue another query to Facebook and get that. So here is a function. It accepts the token, and it's going to go ahead and issue an HTTP request using the fetch API. And I'm requesting the Facebook user ID, the Facebook name, and I pass in the access token right in the URL. I think that's fine. URLs have a maximum length, so if this access token is super mega huge, that might be problematic, but I think this was working. The response, I immediately parse it as JSON, and that JSON has an ID field, and I say that the Facebook user ID is that, and that's the function. Basically, this function returns a Facebook user ID. It goes ahead and queries the API, and it requires the access token. Then I have another function here called get profile by Facebook user ID. So get the profile by Facebook user ID. Takes the user's Facebook user ID and queries backend. Backend in this context is my API for this project. For profile with that Facebook user ID. So this function satisfies this checkmark. Well, it doesn't. But this is like the front end version of it that will interface with this endpoint. Basically, this is where the mobile app is going to try to find a lit user by the Facebook user ID. So in order to do that, the API needs to expose an endpoint which will search over all the users and given a Facebook user ID, and in turn return the lit user by Facebook user ID. And basically, and you see here that it's a fetch request against our API host, which is the backend, the Django backend. And I've added some sort of some endpoint that's like /profile, and it accepts a query parameter called Facebook _ user _ ID, which would be that user ID that the phone app has gotten directly from Facebook. Then the front end, if it gets 200 from the API, from our API, it'll go ahead and parse it as JSON. Otherwise, if the response is not okay, that usually means like a 404 or some sort of error. We're not really doing too much with it. I say undefined. Because the name of the function is get the profile by Facebook user ID. If the API can't find a lit user, by the Facebook user ID, it should either return null or undefined or something like that. If it can find it, we're going to go ahead and return the user as a JSON object. And if at any point there is some other sort of network error, it'll trigger this catch here. What else? I think we added a login, which is an asynchronous function that goes ahead and interfaces with Facebook login. So I think this is a Facebook login. When a user taps login with Facebook, it'll trigger this function, and this is using the Expo Facebook module. Expo for React Native. Expo.io. And if we are looking at the documentation, we can, there's a Facebook part. That's one thing I do miss about Chrome is when you do a search, and let's say one of the results is a hyperlink like this one, you could escape and Chrome would sort of give this focus and you can directly navigate through, and that's something that I find I sorely miss in Safari. But anyway, Facebook, part of Expo. There is an example usage, so expo.facebook login with blah. And is that the only one? Read permissions async. Login with read permission async. So I basically copied this. I basically pretty much copied this example here, and I'm building my thing around that. And so I just wanted to show you that this is Expo. This is the Expo standard library, and we're just using it directly. We're also using async storage. Async storage I'm not sure if we're using the Expo version or if we're using the regular React Native version. No, I'm using the regular React Native version, async storage, and it looks like Expo has another one. Don't know why. Maybe the Expo one offers more things, but that answers that. Basically, we log in with Facebook, and then whatever we get back, we're going to store it on the phone's hard drive as the Facebook token inside some namespace. Previously, I was calling this project Gatsby, so that's why this is here. I should probably change that at some point, but it really doesn't matter. As long as it's like a unique or a relatively unique identifier, you're just setting a namespace for your own benefit on the phone. I don't think so. The phone apps are pretty much are sandbox. So there's no real risk that you call your namespace, you start storing things to like /phone app. I think the operating systems will prevent any sort of collision over there, but this is what we see in the documentation, so I just follow their lead, and we namespace on disk, and we get back the Facebook token, we store it onto the disk, and I go ahead and dispatch some props. So that's Redux. What else? I think I added a comment here saying that CDM, component did mount, checks if an auth token is in long-term storage. This async storage is the long-term storage, by the way. That's what I mean by like the phone's disk hard drive. If there is if there is an off token in long-term storage, advance the user to the dashboard. Basically, that's so like imagine if the user has already signed up and they restarted their phone, and the app starts up. We should read from the disk, and if we see a Facebook token already in there, I want to go ahead and not have the user sort of log in again. That's no reason to inconvenience them. We should just show them the main experience, the dashboard. And I just added another conditional. This is probably already there, and I just added a comment. Alright, so that's all well and good. That is catching up on what randomness is already in here. For those that don't know, I'm using Zish, and GD is an abbreviation. It's short for get diff. Just putting that out there. I have another abbreviation, GST, which is get status. And so yeah, GB get branch. We're working in this GB get branch. We're working in this branch called get Facebook ID. Get Facebook ID. I guess that was a poor name for that. No questions. Let's see. So how do we run this? I think we use Expo. Do I want to show you iOS or Android? Or on device? Not on device, because you folks on the live stream won't be able to see it. So iOS or Android? I'm gonna try iOS in the interest of time. So I feel like there's less risk of surprises with iOS. That guy. React Native run iOS. And if you run a React Native application in this way, using the CLI tool React-Native, and you say run iOS, it'll attempt to run the iPhone simulator and just the simulator. I don't want to type that in. Yeah, I'm not trying to... Maybe Android. There must be some Xcode update, and they want to install yet more stuff. Such a shame, because it does look nice. We're gonna try it in Android. Don't want to type that in. While that's starting up, so part of what I want to do with this channel is sort of describe all kinds of random things that you do in development. One really great resource for if you're developing a React Native application is this React-Native channel in Reactive Flux, Reactive Flux is one of the largest React communities online. For very technical reasons, this community exists inside of a Discord. So you can go on discord.com, and I choose to use, I'm trying out the desktop application, but you can also run it inside of the browser as a web application. But I'm using the OS X desktop application. I'm just trying it out. You basically go to, I think, reactiveflux.com. You can search for it, and yeah, whenever I'm developing and I want to feel helpful, I hang out in React Native. Honestly, like I'm really big on chatting and online communities, programming communities, and this is the best one for React Native that I can find. If you know of a better one, please, I'm all ears. Some very helpful folks in here, some folks that really know their stuff and are actually building and making a living off of writing React Native stuff, applications. They hang out in here. The simulator won't open. Maybe if I start the simulator manually, maybe I can just start the simulator and then start the React Native packager, and hopefully it can see the simulator running, and then that way we'll have it in a simulator. So this is Android Studio. This is like the Xcode for Android. It's like it's the way to it's the editor that Android and Google promotes for Android development. A lot of things just end up requiring this in the same way that a lot of things just end up requiring Xcode if you want to write an iPhone application. It's just the reality that React Native is not really endorsed by either platform, so sometimes you're forced to drop down into each platform's tooling. But hopefully with more materials like this, it becomes easier to learn how to do things, and yeah. So that's the packager, and it's looking good. It looks like it detected the simulator, and we see here that this is Expo, and it says here that it's building JavaScript bundle. Something that I learned from the last live stream was that the resolution wasn't very high, and I'm hoping that the resolution is much higher this time around. Because I can see this, but I don't know if you all can see this. Video output is currently active. So I'm trying to output now at 1440 by 900. Hopefully that is good. Excuse me. So, and here's my baby. Here's my baby. Here's my baby app. White screen, and you see a login with Facebook. And if you shake it, you get the dev menu. So here, this is where we're at in terms of the UI. And I'm gonna go ahead and, if I had a bigger screen, it'd be much nicer to develop this using the simulator, but we're not there yet. Doesn't look like anyone's really chatting, so I'm just gonna put this away. Let's see. See if we can fit all this stuff on one screen. So we have our Kanban board, web browser, documentation stuff here. Here we code, and here we see the results. So packager is down there, code editor is over here. We can expand this. And I think we can, let's go ahead and make another tmux terminal. Close this one. So this is our editor. Called it house party, now it's called lib. No, don't want to do that. Exit. I want tab. Okay, so I'm using Vim tabs. And here is the front end project directory structure. Okay. Chugging along. Let's see. So we have the backend running here. And then here we might be editing the API. And I'm not gonna chat there. Okay, API, UI, phone app, random terminal, documentation, debugger, API, Facebook API debugger, Facebook documentation, random question, live streaming, the thing we want to build. Okay, so let's focus a little bit and just get this one check done. Don't show a dashboard if phone doesn't have the double negative. Maybe show dashboard if phone has off token. How about that? Show the dashboard if phone has off token. I think, okay, so basically that is when we start up the app after having logged in once, we want to detect that the phone has a token and just go ahead and skip to the dashboard. So let's try it. Okay, so we log in. Sure, whatever. I'll rotate that. Rotating that right after this. Invalid response for blob. What does this mean? Invalid response for blob. Yeah. Invalid response for blob. Get. what does that mean? So we logged in with Facebook. Logged in with Facebook, and then must be an issue with the. I mean, sometime after you log in with Facebook. So you go ahead and you press the login with Facebook. The API definitely loaded up the Expo Facebook plugin because we saw the login with Facebook modal, and that comes from Facebook and Expo. Expo invokes that, and then invalid response from Blob. Sometime after that. What do we call it? So we're in components login index. Components login. Whoops. Index. Delete it. Invalid response from blob. Maybe, is there a get in here? Get. And yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna have to debug this using print debugging because I don't remember Facebook. Well, the other thing too is that those are uncommitted changes, so maybe it's not surprising that this blew up. This is all fresh code, and I also wrote it a while back, and so I probably lost context on what I was in the middle of writing. Permissions async. So this thing launches this is from Expo, and this launches the actual modal, which prompted me for my username and password. And then if success, async storage set the token. And then see, it would have been nice. I think I need to use Reactive Tron. There's also Reactive Tron 1 and 2. Last time I worked on this, last time I tried 2, it didn't work. So I'm still stuck on 1. 2 is better. I wanted to use it. I'm going to go ahead and reload. What frustrates me though is that it might have actually set the token, and then another requirement of the application is that if the token has been set, like we want to just go ahead and show the dashboard. So if we see the dashboard, I might not be able to reproduce and debug this right now. And that's why I avoided reloading, but the thing is I can't really debug it anyway, and I need to reload it to make it work with Reactive Tron. Reactive Tron needs to register itself with the application, and that's done by reloading. So we might, who knows? Let's see what happens. Reload. Okay, so that means, okay, connection. So this is working with this now, because otherwise this would be empty. and the app crashed. And that's the packager, so it looks fine. Recently in development. Looks like the Expo on the simulator has lost the connection to the Expo packager. So I'm just gonna go ahead and restart this. So it's detected this guy over here, this person over here is working. I think if you do Control D, I forget the shortcut. There's a way to shake the device, and that will give me the menu that I'm looking for. I forgot how to open the menu, the Expo menu, the React Native menu on this in Android. So I think what I'm gonna do is whenever I'm live streaming, I'm gonna go ahead and change my password to password or something, and then rotate it back to something else. And as far as I know, there isn't really a way to get a Facebook test account. That's scrolling. I'm hoping I see something over here in the debugger. Nothing. For some odd, one of the reasons like Reactive Tron version 2 is better, the Reactive Tron 1 sort of requires you to log out an object, which is absolutely awful. It's such a bad idea. And thankfully they realized that. So, but I do want to say that if you want to log in with Facebook, we are basically logging in with Facebook. I'm not sure if I can do a string. Logging in with Facebook. I think it does have to be an object. I want to see something like that. Logging in with Facebook, no. So we do get in here, and then we are doing this await thing. And then I want to see if we return from that. Logging in with Facebook. I want the type. Logging in with Facebook. Type. Well, we get a couple of things. We got a token and a type. Type. We also get a token. And I go ahead and rename it to token. So that's ES6 syntax, where you can extract the field, deconstruct the field, and assign it to a different, change the name of the variable to something else in one step. I forgot how to. I forgot this the shortcut for reloading this thing in the simulator. Let's look it up, because I can't really make too much progress if I can't reload. Android sim shake. Simulator. How do I shake? Command Z. No? No, that's like the skin. Command M. No? It says Command M. Control M? Control M. Command M. Doesn't work for me. I know this works. You can do the ADB. Just do that. Shake. Nope. Sensors. Move. Then try quickly moving either X, Y, or Z coordinates. Okay. No. So ghetto. So ghetto. Gosh, so ghetto. Well, that's another way to reload it. Induce the error and reload that way. So, did we see something? Invalid response for blob. Symbolic cake. Get profile by user ID foo. JSON. That's my ID. I have a sense that it's not actually running the latest version of this. You can also get hot reloading working, and it's another way to reload it. Logging on Facebook, no. Right, that's one of them. And then the other one, right? Set item. Logging in with Facebook, logging in with Facebook type. Okay, success. And the token. And this is fine. This is not too, this is temporary. So we're going in here and we're doing set storage. And we're setting an item, FB token. And then this dot fetch FB token user ID. And then get profile by user ID. And so I'm not sure, we don't see this catch block outer. Set item runs. And then we do, okay, so we're getting, with that login with Facebook button, we do get the access token, and then we do, and it's successful, and then we do set, we store the token on the phone's disk. And then we store the token right here on the phone's disk. And then we go ahead and go right back to Facebook and we're like, okay, we have this access token. Give me that user's ID. And that's this /v3.1/me. And then we have some debug. So this is the response from the second request. Remember, there are two requests we're making to Facebook. The first one for the API token, and then the second one for the user ID. And so we get, this seems to run fine. Fetch Facebook user ID. I think this runs fine. And then we pass that in, and we try to get the profile from our API. So if we see some oddness in our API, that would explain it. But the API we're running is not sort of getting hit. We'd see it here. If this phone was then talking to this API running on this laptop, we would see something logged in here. So if I were to, you know, go interact with the API somehow, you see extra lines here. You know, refresh a whole bunch of times. That's Safari hitting the back end. This phone is not hitting the back end. And that may require me to update the API host, and that's a secret, which I don't want to show on the live stream. So I think I'm just gonna cut it off there. I think that would be the next thing that I would investigate, is making sure that the simulator is sort of communicating properly with the API running locally. So it's now 1:52 a.m. That's about an hour of development. Hopefully it was interesting, somewhat interesting. Hopefully you learned something. Sort of my intention with these videos is to show the reality of development. You have to, for some context, you know, you can imagine doing this for 40 or 50 hours a week. There's only so much that can really be realistically done in an hour, especially when I'm not really sure where I was going with that. Of course, I would love to show maybe more interesting things. But my intention with these videos is to, you know, show a different point of view on the life of a developer, on what it looks like day to day, and hopefully it teaches people something, you know. Um, if it's not super entertaining, at the very least, hopefully it's educational. So thank you very much. Have a very happy Saturday, happy Friday night, and I'll talk to you soon. So signing off. This is Domain Expert. Um, have a great night, and I'll see you next week.